Hello once again, everybody. Well, it's official. Today, the signing of the Livestock Care Standards, and we have the Director of the Ohio Department of Agriculture, Jim Zehringer, with us right now. And Director, I guess it's a big day. Maybe not the weight of the world off your shoulders, but I'm sure you're feeling a little bit lighter today.
Yeah, we sure are, Gary. And what a great place to do this here in Fort Recovery in Mercer County, where the number one county in the state of Ohio in ag receipts is Mercer. Also the lowest unemployment state of Ohio. That really says how important agriculture is. And by signing these standards, we're completing that constitutional amendment that the voters back in 2009 charged us with doing. So we're proud to have that done, but we're looking forward to continuing this. We're going to continue to meet 3 times a year and keep the board together. And if we have issues we need to deal with, we're going to deal with them.
Well, as chairman of the board, the large committee with the subcommittees, I cannot imagine what it took to get everybody to come together and in the end and agree on everything that you've done. It must have, do you have some magic beans there or something up your sleeve?
Well, I don't know about that, but not only that, but the public was very much involved with this process. Lots of public meetings, lots of internet public input. So, but we had a very professional board made up of farmers, veterinarians, academia, local humane society folks. Everyone was involved, and it took 70 meetings, a little over 70 meetings to get this done. But we all came to consensus, and we had issues, but we worked them out.
Well, as I gather everything, it's sort of like a living document, like our Constitution in a way, because it can be changed. There can be some concerns that come up later that the board will take a look at and maybe change in the future? Yeah,
that's this is a rule. So yeah, we can change that, and I'm sure that there might be some things we have to look at. But the main thing is that now the farmers in the state of Ohio, no matter if you have one animal or 100,000, we have great standards to go by, and you can continue to grow without the threat of not being able to figure out if you can do that or not. So we think we've really set a good set of standards.
As I understand it, there are other states as well looking to Ohio, what Ohio has done to maybe plagiarize a little bit.
And we would welcome that. So we have no problem with anybody plagiarizing our document. We've made that very open, that it's on our website at the Department of Agriculture, and go to it. And if you have suggestions, I'm sure we'd like to hear them also.
If folks do have some questions or some ideas or just like to get a little bit more information, what's the best way for them to go about doing that?
The best way would be to call the Ohio Department of Agriculture.
Very good. We've been visiting with the Director of the Ohio Department of Agriculture, Jim Zehringer. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks, Gary.
And stay with us. More to come when we continue right after this. Hello once again, everyone. This is Dr. David Glauer, the former state veterinarian with the Ohio Department of Agriculture. Dr. Glauer, it's good to talk with you once again.
Good to talk to you, Gary. It's been a while.
Let's talk a little bit about why we are here today, the signing of the livestock care standards that the committee has come up with. It's taken a few months, 18 months, a year and a half exactly, and as I understand it, you handled a lot of the technical aspects of any of the questions that came up. Was that like being a parliamentarian on the committee?
Well, it was more like the guy that brought all of the information there, and then they got to tear it apart and then put it back together again. The board met first in April of 2010, and so here we are at the end of September. So we're about 18 months down the way, at this stage of the game. And, not knowing when we got started, I didn't really come on board until like late June, early July. So I've been at it since then, and it's been pretty intense. And in order to do this, since there's really not a set of standards anywhere that are like ours, some of the countries like Australia and Canada, they've been through the process. The European Union's been working on standards for a long time, and they still don't have theirs completed. Maybe that's the nice thing about being a state and working within the boundaries of the state. But what my function was to review the information that was out there, and it's scattered, and a lot of it ends up being in quality assurance manuals. And so, we had quality assurance manuals for all of the species of livestock for transportation. And so read that, looked at what might be appropriate that could be used in Ohio, wrote it down, took it to the board. We actually started with getting that information to the species subgroups. And so, we had 11 of those. And so it was looking through, through horses, through cattle, through beef cattle, through layers and turkeys. So it was gathering all of that information that dealt with transportation, health, housing, and all of that aspect, putting that together, and then finally ending up with the set of standards that we have now. And so we have the most comprehensive. There are some other states such as New Jersey that has they're using quality assurance, but we have the musts and shalls in ours. That these are what has to be done in the state of Ohio.
When you have that many subgroups, was it difficult for each of them to come to similar conclusions so that you could get it down on paper?
Well, the interesting part about that was that from July into November, December, and working with the various subspecies groups at that point, there were some commonalities, and so we created a chapter called the General Considerations. And so that General Considerations chapter has lots of everything in for all of the species, and so then the finite details for each species is in those species chapters. So it makes a nice amalgamation of that work, I think.
When you get farmers, livestock producers, veterinarians, representatives from HSUS, when all of those groups get together, were they willing to readily compromise, or was there bickering going on in the decision-making process?
I don't know whether I wouldn't classify it as bickering. There was some really good discussion. People like you and I, we would have some varying points, varying ideas on certain things. And so, what was nice about it is that everybody put it on the table in the species subgroups. Then we took it to the technical research and had them look at what they might put into that. But then when we took it back to the board, it was the board's final decision. And there was not always agreement there, but they agreed to what the standards should do. And I think what we've set is a working set of standards that the agricultural community can be proud of. It's a lot of the things that everybody does every day. This is just put it in a format that says this is what's going to happen.
And as I understand it, several other states are looking to Ohio and looking to maybe take, in some cases, almost verbatim what Ohio has done for their individual states.
Dr. Forshey, who is state veterinarian, as in that position, you are a member of the United States Animal Health Association, and so your 40 other 9 colleagues of state veterinarians in the various states, and he shared it with all of them. And, I think he used the word that we don't want to use in journalism, but plagiarism. He said plagiarize it, So I think that it can be used, yes.
Very good. Dr. David Glauer, our guest, former state veterinarian, thank you for being with us.
Thanks, Gary. Appreciate it.
We're visiting right now with Mike Bailey, the Executive Director of the Ohio Care Standards Board. Mike, as the Executive Director, I suppose you had your work cut out for you. You had you had to make sure all the T's were crossed, the I's dotted. What was the most difficult part of your job?
Well, thank you. We all had our work cut out for us, I think, looking back in this process. I think just the logistics of moving this whole process forward. My role was very small, but I think working with the members of the board's 13 subcommittees to ensure that as we went meeting to meeting, what are the right materials going out in advance of the meeting, setting the agenda, moving the flow forward. So, it was largely an administrative job, but hopefully by all of us working together, I think we've ended up with a very strong set of standards.
Were you pushed by the calendar in any way?
We wanted to do this right. So we wanted to get as much done as efficiently as we could, but we also recognize you cannot rush something like this, which has such a profound impact on agriculture in the state. So it had to be done right above all. And Director Zehringer certainly brought that leadership and that vision coming in.
I would imagine, too, working with the variety of people on the board representing various interests, livestock producers, members of the Ohio Department of Agriculture, veterinarians, HSUS, and what have you. People may not have seen the light in the correct direction every single moment. And was that your responsibility to try to get everybody back on course?
Well, I think part of that responsibility, and I think the board itself came to this. Everyone had different viewpoints, but I think the civility, that's one of the most surprising things, is that on some very difficult issues amongst all the meetings, and again, we had public comment opportunities at all 76 of these meetings of the board and the subcommittees. And so, you would expect people have very strong views on all ends. But it was very civil. And I think that's one of the most surprising and welcomed aspects of the process, is that folks came to express their views, but also to listen to others as well.
I suppose, too, the emotions were intense at times, and the fact that the various emotions may have educated the members of the board a little bit differently than they actually thought going into the whole process.
Sure, without a doubt. I mean, it would affect anybody to hear, to hear emotional testimony that comes from producers, from folks on the animal rights side, from consumers. So a lot of people brought their strong-held opinions forward, but they believed in what they were saying. And so, kudos on the board for hearing it all and taking it all in and considering everything. I think it just goes to show, I think, the wisdom of those members appointed to this board.
Well, the board has voted on the rules. Director Zehringer has signed the rules, and now it's up to who to write the rules.
Sure. Now that the rules are effective in the Ohio Administrative Code, now it's the Department of Agriculture's responsibility to enforce those rules. And it's worth noting, too, that this board is not done. They're not just walking away from this process. The board is required to meet 3 times a year, to come back and review all of these rules 3 times a year. So, as new technologies emerge, as new techniques in the field evolve, it gives the board the opportunity to amend these rules and strengthen these rules moving forward. So that's a good safeguard that's in place in the process.
Very good. Mike Bailey has been our guest, the Executive Director of the Ohio Care Standards Board. Mike, thanks for being with us.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Hello once again. This is Dr. Tony Forshey, the State Veterinarian with the Ohio Department of Agriculture. Dr. Forshey, with the Ohio Livestock Care Standards rules being put in place, actually signed by the Director of the Ohio Department of Agriculture, Dr. Zehringer. What does that do now to the board? Does it continue to work, or is it on hiatus, or how does that all come together?
No, the board, the legislation says that the board will need to meet 3 times a year. So our next meeting actually is November 1st of 2011 here. So it will be required to meet 3 times a year. These rules are in Ohio Administrative Code, so and not in statute. The legislation's in statute. So this allows the board to meet 3 times a year. If there needs to be any tweaking, any new technology that comes along that needs to be incorporated in these standards, then we can do that in a very short period of time, brought up in front of the board and agreed upon to change, and then that would occur then within 90 to 120 days to go through the JCAR process.
Now, you've been involved in how many meetings and in how many different communities, and probably thousands of questions asked about how this is all going to come together.
Yeah, we've, I think, a total of 76 meetings in the 14 to 16 months, and so average about 1 every day and a half. And it took a lot of time and effort, but I've always felt that Ohio is the state that needs to be doing this, because we are so strong in agriculture in the state of Ohio through our governor, our legislature, and of course Director Zehringer. So there's been a lot of questions and a lot of things, and my division of animal health will be the ones that does the enforcement of these standards. So if we get legitimate complaints coming in, we'll go to those farms and see what's going on, if there is a violation, and then we'll also try to get those producers into compliance, give them an education of what all they need to do to change to come into compliance. And that's what agriculture is about, it's compliance.
As I understand it, in several states, there aren't any kind of rules such as this, where really there's no backbone that you can really do anything to, say, a producer that might be a bad apple. But in the Buckeye State now, with these rules in place, we can hold, the bad apples accountable.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. Most of the states that I've seen that have put some guidelines in place, if you will, and call them standards, they're not in rule. So they're not really enforceable. They're minimum standards guidelines, whereas these standards are in rule, and they are enforceable. So we're the first in the nation to do that, and all the other states now have access to ours, and we've told them to plagiarize to their heart's content, because these work, I think, in the Midwest. They may not work in Hawaii or Alaska, but the template is there and the process is there, and it turns out that that's a pretty good process that we've used.
Well, now you have, through your career and working with producers in Ohio, you're readily familiar with the fact that, I don't know what the statistic might be, but 99.9% of the producers, or close to that, actually do the right thing today, and there's not going to be a lot of change in the regards to those producers.
No, I mean, if you read through the standards, we kept them as broad as we could, but really they're nothing more than common sense management practices that 99.9% of all farmers do today anyway. And so it's an opportunity, I think, maybe for some of the commodity groups maybe to police themselves a bit. They've not had no way to do that in the past, and we don't want to put people out of business. We want them to come in compliance and not give industries a bad name.
Well, Dr. Forshey, even today, now that the rules have been signed, I'm sure that there's some questions out there in some areas or parts, segments of the industry. If folks do have some questions, how's the best way for them to get those to the appropriate person?
Well, they simply call my office in the Division of Animal Health at the Ohio Department of Agriculture. That number is 614-728-6220. We have several little cards around. You can go on the website, livestockcarestandardsboard.gov, and it has the phone numbers on there where we can be reached.
And we'll have that website on our website as well for those folks that would like to contact us. Well, Dr. Forshey, we thank you for the time, and thanks for the good, hard work that you and the rest of the committee has done.
Well, thank you, and thank the people of the state of Ohio. They're the ones that wanted this and felt the need for it. So we thank you for helping us get the message out there.
Dr. Tony Forshey, the state veterinarian with the Ohio Department of Agriculture. Stay with us. Back with more when we continue right after this.